What's up guys, I'm Rich from Spray Black Studios, and today we're going to have a look at an easy way to level up your battle ready minis without using contrast paints. So then guys, maybe you've just picked up a new Indomitus box, or maybe a starter set which you're desperate to get painted up, ready to game, down the club with your friends. Or maybe you've got a tournament coming up and you need to prep your army just to make sure you meet the minimum painting standards. Well, generally, most clubs and most tournaments look at a tabletop standard of 3 colours plus basing generally. But it doesn't take a huge amount of extra effort just to push it up a little notch. So in this video we're going to explore the use of washes just to add a bit of definition to your models, make them stand out without that huge time intensive step of edge highlighting. With the advent of contrast paints, a lot of people would say that this has been made a lot easier. For me personally, relying on the one thick coat style of painting unfortunately means that there's a lot of techniques, a lot of very important techniques that you're not learning. These techniques can be very important for you if you want to learn to progress, to really push your painting up to a much higher level. Contrast paint essentially works as a superwash. With weighted pigments, it draws down into the recesses of the model to provide some depth and some contrast, but it does have a tendency of struggling on large fat surfaces, so surfaces such as a Space Marine shoulders pad or armour plates. And this is where good use of washes can really come into their own, and this is where the techniques that I'll be looking at today will really help you continue to get a nice clean effect while still getting that definition and that contrast. So as I wasn't one of the lucky ones to get the Indomitus box nice and early, I've got a Space Marine Intercessor Sergeant here which we're going to be painting up as a Blood Angel. Now as this tutorial is more about the next step after tabletop standard, I'm not going to cover each step getting to that level, so instead we need a montage. Wait, wrong type of montage. So having got our Intercessor all base coated up, though admittedly using 7 colours rather than 3, this is where I personally start for a tabletop standard. Our first step here is to improve it using the obligatory liquid talent, also known as Nuln Oil. We will start to add the Nuln Oil into the recesses and into the gaps in the armour. Make sure to use a nice brush with a good point. People are often tempted to go with a tiny brush for this, but you'll often find that the brush itself won't hold enough of the wash within to really be worth it. Something like this Element Games Kolinsky Sable character brush is absolutely perfect for this job. Much like contrast paints, it can be very tempting just to slop the wash on and let it do its work. But like the contrast paint, doing this can lead to watermarks and unwanted build-ups on the armour plates. By applying it in a much more controlled manner, it will take a fair bit longer, but will give you the effect that you want without any of the nasty side effects. This technique is called pin washing and gives the armour plates a lot of definition and adds a lot of depth to your paint job. I'm also going to pay particular attention to the shoulder pads here. An often used technique here is called blacklining, where you go in with a Chaos Black or something similar and just put in a black line around the inside of the shoulder pad bevel. With this, a bit of Nuln Oil does the trick absolutely lovely. Just means you're going to have to do a couple of coats normally just to get enough of a effect on there. So you can see the addition of the Nuln Oil has really helped this model. The pin washing has helped break up the never-ending sea of red on the armour, and it's given it some lovely definition. Staying with the Nuln Oil, we're going to use it for what it's more commonly used for, and that's being a bit more fast and loose with the application over the metal areas to give that definition, and also helps dull it down, as currently the lead belcher used for the metal is coming across as super bright. We're also going to use the Nuln Oil here for one of my favourite techniques, and that's to use it as a tint. You'll notice that I've painted his hair and the pistol in grey. Using multiple careful layers of Nuln Oil, it will slowly darken the area and build up into the shadows in the recesses, giving you some natural highlights. As it's near enough impossible to put shadows onto black, this gives you an ability to build up a bit of contrast without needing edge highlighting or dry brushing a highlight onto the area. Now we jump to the Reichland Flesh Shade for the skin tone. A simple wash over the skin will add a bit of colour into the recesses. Again, although you want to use a full coat over the skin areas, try and pick out the recesses that would generally be the more shadow areas, so such as your eyes, under the nose, under the chin, etc. And now we're changing to Agrax Earth Shade for the material and for the purity seals. When doing areas like this, I'll tend to thin the wash down with a little bit of water, just to ensure that A, it flows a little bit better, and B, that the pigment doesn't build up quite as strong. Generally I'd normally use a palette, but as you can see, because I'm speed painting, I've been a little bit lazy here and I've just mixed up a bit of water in the top of the pot. I find that it's very important to have a light brush here. Even sped up, you can see that my brush is almost constantly in motion to ensure that the wash is layered into the folds in the material, but also preventing it from pooling anywhere that I didn't want to. But now you can see my rookie error. Because I was filming this and didn't take the time to dry the front before painting the back, the wash has run down the front of the banner. This can be tidied up a little, but eventually leave to a couple of watermarks. So we've added the definition into the armour plates, metallics and the material, but our gold detailing is still looking bright and a little bit flat. To change this, I'll go back to the Reichland Flesh Shade. This will serve two purposes here. Firstly, it will add to those shadows and give some depth into the recesses, but it also gives a bit of a tint to the gold to make it look more burnished and less clean. Due to the fact that the Reichland wash is a bit more on the red-orange side of the scale, this also works well with the red armour. Gold can be quite a tough colour to really get right, but this combination of Retributor armour and Reichland Flesh Shade is a classic and gives you a very striking, quite regal gold with very minimal effort. And just before we pack the Reichland Flesh Shade away, I then go back in and drop a tiny bit just into the folds of the material to add in a little bit more colour and tie it in with the armour. So with that done, he's looking pretty much finished. We'll now just go back to the Nuln Oil for a second and just put a little bit on the purity seals and onto the green cabling that you can see, just to finish it off. And there you have it. So going from a model that I would definitely consider to be tabletop standard to what I would say is a decent tabletop plus at this point, with just the addition of 3 Games Workshop washes. The addition of the washes gives you an impression of depth and contrast without you having to spend a huge amount of time doing intricate edge highlighting works. Adding these steps in does add time to what you would normally spend painting the Mini up to a tabletop standard. But these are techniques that will bring a lot to your model and will save you time in the long run from not having to spend that time edge highlighting, layering or glazing. As mentioned earlier in the video, a lot of people would question me not using contrast paints for this purpose. And whilst yes, they can be a very good tool and they can be a very good substitute for washes, something like Black Templar Thin Down would make a very good substitute for Nuln Oil, Skeleton Horde would have done very well for the material. But it is just a tool at the end of the day, and actually learning those techniques, upping those skills, will make you a better painter in the long run. So thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you've found it useful, maybe got a bit of value out of it. And if you've got any friends that maybe need that little help, that little bit of a push just to up the level of their battle ready minis, then please feel free to share this video to them. For me personally, the better looking minis that we can get on the board, the better our collective enjoyment of the hobby will be. If you want to support the channel, then please subscribe, that way you won't miss any further uploads that I make. And please have a look at our social media pages in the description down below. Oh, and don't forget guys, if all else fails, spray black and start again.